Hello everyone, and welcome to this monthly show where I build replicas of my favorite items from movies, games, and TV shows. This month may be being a little late to the show, but following the semi-recent release of the Pokémon Scarlet and Violet video games, we build our very own set of Paldea region gym badges. This is DIY Prop Culture Builds. In every main sequence Pokemon game, except for one, the ultimate goal of your journey is to take down all 8 of the region's gym leaders to earn the badges in order to take on the Pokemon League. The newest game in the series, Scarlet and Violet, is no different, sporting its very own set of brand new gym badges. Both the surprising intricacy and overall uniformity are a departure from the older badges, but a really sleek design choice in my opinion. Unfortunately, that uniformity was something that would turn out to be quite a challenge to replicate faithfully. For this build, you will need hot glue, modeling clay, an empty soda can, casting rubber putty, cardboard, 8 pinch pins, quick cure resin, the following paints, and super glue. You'll only need the last one if you screw this up, like I did. Before we get into how I successfully built these badges, let's look into a few of my failed versions first. My first go around, I simply tried to model each badge freehand out of clay, and well, you can see how those turned out. The second time around, I tried to stamp them out in clay with one clay piece, but I got a similar uneven result. My third go-around, I came up with the idea of using the bottom of a soda can. There appears to be 2 parts to each of these badges. The central area where the type symbol is and this raised silver brass edge. So in order to achieve this, I needed a dip in the middle. I filled part of the middle of the bottom of a soda can with hot glue so that when I pushed a ball of clay into the negative, it would make the shape that I wanted. Though using this method, I got 8 uniform badges. They were unfortunately not really the shape I was looking for. The center section was far too concave and the badge was just too big. A far cry from the too small and ununiform badges that I had already made. I'll be honest, at this point I was pretty frustrated and still reconsidering ways to do this right. It was mid-February and I was still working on a video that was supposed to come out in November, so that didn't put me in a very good mood. In my final redesign, I considered the bead of hot glue that I made as part of my original mold for my third attempt. And after removing that from the bottom of the soda can, I realized that this was the perfect shape for the badge that I was looking for. That I'd have to model the rim separately, but really it would be as perfect as I could get. So a few days later, after the cycle of squeezing out an 1.25" diameter bead of hot glue into the bottom of an empty soda can, I peeled each of them off, being very careful not to destroy the surface of it, and had 8 uniform bases to build the rest of my badges out from. Now it was time to tackle these raised borders. The most challenging part was how these appear to have a feathery braided pattern. These definitely threw me for a loop. So for each badge, I scored out a few holes along the perimeter of my hot glue bead and then rolled out some modeling clay to create the raised section. I modeled a rim with that clay and then pressed in the braided pattern by hand. Repeat 7 more times and there you go. This is the point where each badge diverges from each other in design, in that they all have their very own symbols that correspond to their elemental typing. Honestly, this part was the most challenging due to the intricacy of the very small designs. The first was the bug type badge, which has what looks to be a beetle with a set of half-open wings. It was one of the more challenging ones, and the one that I feel came out the least accurate. But alas, after rolling out an impossibly thin tube of clay and creating a divided circle, I had an approximation of what appears in the game. The second badge is the grass type badge, and it sports a pattern of these 3 slanted blades of grass. In order to create these, I went a different route and created the blank shapes of the grass fully, placed the individual pieces down in the center of the badge, and then carved out their internal grooves. It's a different approach than I used for the rest of the badges, but I think it worked out pretty well. The third badge is the electric badge, and in my opinion, the best of the 8 that I did. I went back to the clay rolling technique and used that to roll out an outline to look like a thunderbolt. The fourth badge is the water type badge, and it sports a water drop very reminiscent of the Cascade badge from the original Pokemon Red and Blue games. Using the clay, I outlined that drop and used an oval of clay to create the shimmer at the bottom of the drop. The fifth badge is the normal type badge, and it has this symbol that honestly reminds me of the Mickey Mouse ears. I simplified that symbol just so that there was less moving parts to make it way more difficult than it had to be. Although in the end, I came out with a shape that had a raised middle disc, so it wasn't as accurate to the game. The sixth badge is the ghost badge, and has this funny little emoji-like ghost symbol. I used the same method that I did for the others, and then using the same technique that I did for the water badge, I created the 2 eye dots. If I were you, I'd really pay attention to how you seal these on there. As clay doesn't really adhere to hot glue super well, I ended up having to glue these eyes back on several times after they dried. The second to last badge is the Psychic type badge, and it has a 6-pointed star symbol on it. Similarly to the normal badge, I simplified the way this shape is, and as a result, the end product suffered a little bit. Instead of modeling the 2 edges separately, I tried to take the grass badge approach and modeled both lines as one, trying to groove in the middle gap afterwards. Finally, our last badge is the Ice type badge, and it sports this snowflake pattern that's honestly really cool. It may be my favorite of the 8. I semi-simplified this one as well, carving out the internal spokes of the snowflake after I had modeled it. However, unlike the bug, normal, and psychic badges, I believe that this simplification played into the badge's strengths very well. After letting them dry overnight, we have the blanks for our badges. And yes, I say blanks because these aren't the finished pieces. I honestly don't trust the integrity of the hot glue base, and therefore I thought it was a good idea to make these badges out of resin, and as that would stand up far better to the wear and tear that I hope these badges don't have to go through. And honestly, they just make for a more structurally sound piece. As such, this meant that I had to make a set of rubber casts for each of the badges. I'm using this amazing super putty stuff, which I haven't used in the past. I've used liquid systems before, but I thought that this would serve these small individual badges better than, well, the liquid casts. And honestly, this stuff works wonders. It's really nice to not have to deal with the mess of the liquid, and the fact that it cures in 20 minutes is awesome, and meant that I could pour the resin the same day. I'm not sponsored, but this stuff's pretty great. So about half an hour later, I demolded my casts and prepared for my resin. I knew I wanted these badges to be pins that you could pin onto like a shirt or like into a frame, and therefore I bought a set of pinch pin backs to attach to these badges. I surmised that if I stuck the pin through a cardboard backer like this and placed that backer upside down over the mold while the resin was curing, that the pin would fuse into the resin. I also bought a new resin system for this video, as the clear stuff is honestly just far too expensive. Also, the system that I found was supposed to cure in under 20 minutes as well, and boy did it. After 5 minutes, it began to heat up and solidify, and as such, I needed to do this twice, as I wasn't expecting it to cure this quickly. So, after another half hour, they were done. I popped them out, and they were perfect. Well, mostly. Some of them didn't keep their pins, unfortunately. However, I had a plan for that. Glue doesn't stick well to resin, neither does paint, so I figured that I would have to prime these badges anyways. So I sprayed down a coat of primer on both sides and used a drop of super glue once the primer had dried to attach the pin backs to their badges. And the next day, they were dry and secure, ready for painting. Using a base coat of silver spray paint, I painted over the badges to give them an overall metallic color. And then using a bronze silver specialty paint, I painted on the bronzed rims with a brush. Once that was dry, I got to painting the badge's individual symbols. The bug badge is this yellowy green, while the grass badge is a bright green. The electric and water badges are yellow and blue respectively, and the normal badge I painted white where it was appropriate to. The ghost badge's symbol is a deep purple, and for what I could do for my disaster of a psychic badge, I painted pink. The ice badge finally sports a light blue shade, and after those colors dry, and we attach the pin backs to the pins, we have our very own set of Paldea gym badges. So, this video took me months to make, and to be honest, it was really difficult to figure out a good way to do this initially. Once I figured out my technique, however, the process was relatively simple, if not a little challenging. But I'm really excited that I could finally bring back DIY prop culture builds after its 3, almost 4-month hiatus. But honestly, I think the break was worth it, as the results were pretty good. Not including the relatively expensive resin and rubber, which is really only important if these badges are going to be anything else but shelf decorators. These badges are super cheap to make, and if you do it the way that I did without going through all of my trial and error, you can probably make these in about a week's time, accounted for all the dry times that occur throughout the week. Hopefully I can do another DIY props video this month. I kind of want to do something for the new Hogwarts Legacy games, because I'm a big Harry Potter fan, and I haven't done wands in over a year, and they're honestly really fun to make. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the return of DIY prop culture builds, and as always, if you like this video and want to see more like it, then subscribe, and turn on the bell to get notified when I upload next.